Yeah, that's great. So I actually know Dr. T because he was one of my professors in undergrad at Eastern Illinois University when he used to live in the cornfields. Uh, so he's asked me to talk to you guys a little bit about what I do, kind of my career path, and see if it sheds any light for you on what you want to do in the future. So I'll start by giving an introduction about who I am, where I'm from, all that kind of stuff. Then I'll go into what I do for my job and what marketing analytics is. And then next, I'll touch briefly on master's programs in analytics. And following that, I'll give you guys a little bit of advice, some things that I know now that I wish I knew at your age. And then I'll leave it open to questions at the end, but certainly go ahead and stop me, raise your hand, whatever, if you have a question throughout my talk. I hope it is engaging. I hope you guys gain some value from it. Yeah, so I'll dive right in. So I'm 24 years old. I graduated undergrad at Eastern Illinois University in 2017, so almost 2 years ago. From there, I went straight into an internship where I was at a CPG company, which means consumer packaged goods, for those of you that are unfamiliar. And then straight from there, I shipped off to Rochester, New York to get my master's in marketing analytics at the University of Rochester. And now I currently live in Boulder, Colorado, and I work at a company called Analytic Partners as an associate marketing science analyst. Okay, I don't think you'll have too many questions coming out of that. But so I'll just jump right into kind of what I do as a job. So what we do at Analytic Partners is we really focus on marketing analytics. So we do a lot of marketing mix modeling, which is it's a way of attributing either product sales, donations to a charity, subscription signups, all back to the marketing activities that could have caused them. So we're kind of the people that answer the question, hey, how does that TV advertisement for that bag of chips or that soda impact sales, and what is the ROI or return on investment of that advertisement? And we can do that across TV, digital tactics, social media, and as well tell the impact of pricing. So price elasticities are something that we can give our clients as well. And that's kind of the bread and butter of what we do. We also do some other kind of niche work in multi-touch attribution modeling, which is kind of tracking the customer journey on the web to attribute those same things back to different touch points that you're going through in the customer cycle online. So does a banner ad prop up and you click on that, and then you go to the website, you land on this page, this page, this page, and kind of assessing how each individual page, each individual advertisement online is impacting customers or potential donors. So I can't tell you any of the companies or organizations that I'm working for because I've signed non-disclosure agreements, so we don't release any of the clients. Currently, I'm working for a large U.S. charity, and then I'm also working for a large CPG brand, or consumer packaged goods again. So I work for a consumer packaged goods brand that focuses on food products. And right now, it's kind of been interesting working with a charity. You don't typically see charities as people that are hiring consultants. But when you think about it, if a charity is doing TV ads or they're sending out mail or digital ads, all that stuff, they're seeking the same thing. They want to maximize the return, in this case donations, on those advertisements, and they really want to get as many donations as possible. So that's been kind of an interesting experience and really good thus far.
I know you mentioned you can't really go into specifics about the type of products you've been advertising, but could you just give a general idea of what type of advertising campaigns you've done?
Yeah, so we measure all sorts of campaigns because we like to take a holistic view of what our clients are doing. So the CPG brand that I've been working on recently, they do social media advertisements, paid advertisements across Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, Snapchat. They do TV, they do digital banner ads, they do digital video ads, they do those ads that come up on Hulu before you watch, or in the middle of your Hulu if you don't pay for the premium one. There's in-store advertisements as well as trade promotions. So when you go into a store and something is on the end cap versus in the aisle, or if it's on a temporary price reduction, we also factor all of that as well as price into our analysis, and then we'll report back on the ROI of each individual tactic. Does that make sense?
But you don't run the ad campaign, right? You just
No, we are not. We are not a media agency, so we get data inputs from media agencies, our clients' media agencies, and then what we report back to our clients is how their campaigns are performing. So then, when they're deciding with their media agency on how to execute for next year, they have our insights of what's really working for them and what's really not working as hard for them.
let me ask you one question. So how do you weed out some of the unimportant effects? Let's say, what if the weather has an impact on the food sales that day? Like, what do you guys do about that?
That's a great question. For highly seasonal or weather impacted businesses, we actually have a product called Helio that is a machine learning product that can go ahead and it takes weather forecast from IBM and it inputs it in, so we're able to forecast for our clients as well on how that affects it. In terms of more generally seasonal products, so I'm trying to think of a good one without giving away any of my clients. Um, let's say a hot cocoa mix or something like that, where you'd expect it to be a lot higher sales during the winter. We might put a variable in there, a dummy variable, to account for that seasonal effect. But moving on to business school and master's programs, how many of you are interested in going on to, pursue another degree, possibly in analytics or an MBA, by show of hands? Very cool.
Yeah. You don't see the entire class, but there's a good number.
Yeah,
Raised.
awesome. So I'd like to talk a little bit about why I chose my business school and way to think about your decision-making process in regards to that. Dr. T was actually been very helpful, and he's one of the ones that got me thinking in this way that in the end it's an investment, and you're looking for a return on your investment. So price should always become a factor, and you should always be shopping for the best projected return on that investment. So looking at the price, the scholarships that they're going to offer you potentially, as well, what's the positive return? So what connections will it give you? Are alumni from that school at big companies? Are they in the area you want? So would you want to go to grad school, say in Colorado, if your goal was to land a job in New York City? Probably not. I mean, it's not saying you're not going to do it, but there's going to be less alumni connections because of the geographical location. That being said, I went to grad school in New York and ended in Colorado, so what do I know? Another piece of general advice, and you don't have to follow this, I was very interested in not finding an MBA program. So I have a Master of Science in Marketing Analytics, which is a one-year degree. I felt that for somebody without full-time work experience coming straight out of undergrad, that an MBA wasn't quite the right option for me. And I really wanted to gain a specific skill set in analytics. That's why I chose to pursue that degree. One of the thoughts I had coming out of undergrad was, hey, these big schools, they're not going to accept me because, yeah, I have a good GPA, yeah, I have good scores, but I went to Eastern Illinois University. Nobody's ever heard of it. And I had quite the opposite experience. So I would say if you're feeling at all like your school or your background will deter you from getting into a program, do not feel that way. If you have the scores, if you can talk in an interview, if you have a decent GPA, you are going to get into those great programs, and they don't look down because you went to a smaller school. Another kind of thing about what I picked up in grad school, so I picked up programming languages specifically. So I picked up the language R, as well as SQL or SQL as it's often called. as well as the platform Tableau, which is not necessarily a programming language. It's a data visualization software. It's super cool. Costs a lot. So if your school's not you with access to something like Tableau, I would suggest going to Power BI. It's Microsoft's version that's free for the most part, and it's mostly the same.
Why do you think that it was important to have that programming language for your marketing position?
Gotcha. So I work in marketing analytics, so a lot of things I do is like number crunching, data prep, analysis, those kind of things. So it comes in handy. I'll give you a good example of when a programming language came in handy the other day. So we had a large data set from our client. We got 400 million rows of data, and that cannot fit in Microsoft Excel. It'll crash the computer, it'll crash Excel immediately. So we needed to load it into SQL or SQL, and then kind of aggregate it down, do a bunch of filtering on it, and then get it to a point where we could put it in Excel or put it into another platform to do the analysis. So that was important to me.
Are there like any other fields or more specific areas in marketing that you were geared towards before, but then decided to go to analytics, or is that really the only? Because I'm not a marketing major, so I don't really know much about it. But are there like different jobs? Because like in finance, there are like different things you can do in finance. So I was wondering.
Yeah. That's a great question. So of course, so you could go client side. So you could be like a brand manager per se, where you're kind of making those decisions. And yes, they use numbers, but it's not as quantitatively based. They probably never touched a programming language, that kind of thing. There's also sales positions. So if you want to sell insurance, or if you and there's also management positions you could get from a marketing background. So I actually did an internship in undergrad with Target, a store management internship. So those kind of opportunities are available. I kind of came into marketing as a freshman, not really knowing at all what I really want to do. And then kind of through some coursework, exploring. My brother had a job that was quasi marketing analytics. I kind of discovered that that was a path I wanted to go down and like get that skill set. So that's kind of how I came to where I am today, but there's certainly other opportunities.
When you graduate with a marketing degree, well, you'll see all the resumes that will include communication skills or soft skills. So it's one way to differentiate yourself as well. Like if you're in finance, you become a CFA. If you're accounting, you become CPA. You have other ways to show your expertise. But in marketing, how do you show you have certain like hard skills, quantitative skills? It's through these programming languages. Do you agree, Lucas? What?
Yeah, that's an amazing point. You kind of jumped the gun on one of my points. So whether it's programming languages or just more specific skills like getting views into Google Analytics, which is not necessarily doing analytics, it kind of puts it out for you, but you're able to read it, or specific Excel skills. I say that every business student has Microsoft Excel on their resume, and when it's just Microsoft Excel, it means nothing to me as somebody who recruits and somebody who interviews people. But if you have Microsoft Excel, and then like in my resume, I have in parentheses optimization solver, pivot tables, conditional formatting, those specific skills that show, hey, you actually really know what you're doing in this platform. You know, if it just says Excel, you might think, oh, they've opened it and they've, added a couple numbers. Great. But if you can add more specific hard skills, that's going to help you not only in marketing analytics. A lot of brand management jobs require you to know how to do a VLOOKUP or how to run a pivot table, those kind of things. So yeah, spot on. You want to stand out when you're being recruited, and having just those general communication skills, having a marketing degree really doesn't do much for you in terms of standing out. So another point about specific career fields, one thing you find out when you graduate college is that there's a lot of people that study a lot of different things that end up in a completely opposite direction. So a good example, I had a manager at Target who was making well above six figures, doing great, and he studied Native American studies in undergrad. So just because you study one thing doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be doing that. We have 2 people in our office that dropped out of PhD programs in political science that do marketing analytics for us. So that's kind of interesting. So never think that your degree limits you in what you can do. Kind of recognizing that I want to share at the end, I'll share my resume from my sophomore, junior year of college compared to what it is now, and we can kind of laugh at me a little bit. So some advice that I titled this section on my little notes that I'm carrying, things I know now that I wish I knew at your age, things that can add value during this presentation. So for you sophomores and freshmen out there, this will be super applicable. In terms of standing out when you're a junior and you're applying to that, internship from in between your junior and senior year of undergrad, it's important that you have stuff on your resume from before that period. So if you can take an unpaid internship or an internship with a department at your school, something to differentiate you, it's not bad. The only thing I had was I worked at a restaurant before and during college. It's not necessarily terrible, but it looks really good if you can get an internship, say with the athletic department. I know my undergrad offered undergrad internships with the athletic department. They paid minimum wage, but it looked good on a resume. So kind of looking for that before you're applying for that marquee internship time between your junior and senior year, looking to put things on your resume before that time and planning for that and saying, I want my resume to be relatively full by the time I get to that point, will help you to get a better internship at that point. Does that make sense? Get involved early. So run for the board of whatever club you're in. It's usually pretty easy to do well running a club. Dr. T was actually my faculty advisor for the club that I ran. So we had a bunch of funny conversations about goings on. But definitely get involved. It looks really good on a resume in lieu of job experience is managing a club, being a vice president, whatever it is. Even if it has nothing to do with business, it could be, very random, but if it shows that you have a passion for something and that you are a leader, it will look good when you're applying to internships and full-time positions. So to Dr. T's point about specific skills that you can pick up and kind of add to your resume that are relatively easy, Google Analytics and AdWords offer courses online. So you can kind of learn a little bit about how Google stores information about advertisements for companies on their website, and then how it's transferred, and then how as well Google AdWords is kind of in the search engine optimization realm. So those are both free. They take a few hours, but it'll kind of differentiate yourself on a resume when you're applying to an internship is that, hey, I've taken the time that I'm certified in Google Analytics or Google AdWords. As well, R, SQL, Python, VBA, which is it's the underlying language that Excel runs on, is Visual Basic. These are all skills that there are multiple platforms online that you can pay very little money for coursework in, and it'll start you from the very ground level of I've never seen this before in my life and teach you how to code. It's great to do that and to throw those certifications on your resume or on your LinkedIn, because even if you're not an expert, it really shows that you're a go-getter, that you took time outside of the classroom to kind of pursue a skill that's perceived as valuable in your field. So I really do suggest that for any of you that are interested in analytics, and broader than that, look into job listings of jobs that your goal. If your goal is sales, let's say, look into what's required for that sales job on job postings, even if you're 2 years out from applying to such a role, and kind of work towards what you want to put on your resume and what's valuable. So can you take an online course in sales and put that certification on your resume? Or if you're interested in analytics, can you put an R certification or an Excel VBA certification on your resume? It looks really impressive to employers, and that's one way to kind of get yourself geared up for the job search, even if you are 2 or 3 years out.
So during college as a student, did you have a LinkedIn, and did it like help you in any way? Like during sophomore and junior year?
Yes, that's an amazing question. I was actually just about to talk about it, so you're right on cue. I used it very poorly in undergrad, I'll say that. I didn't use it the way that I learned how to use it in my master's program now. Where LinkedIn can be really valuable for you is if you're looking for internships or full-time positions, or you're just looking to explore. One of the features of LinkedIn is you can filter people based on what area they live in, what company they work at, and what school they went to. So if you're interested in working for, let's just say Google, and then you filter on Google, people that work at Google, and people that went to Farley Dickinson. You might be able to extend them a message really quickly saying, hey, I'm really interested in what you do at Google. I'd love to talk to you if you have 15 to 20 minutes to spare so I can ask you some questions. And then come prepared with great questions to ask them about their job and maybe about how to get there eventually. And what might come out of that is some insight that you use in a future interview. And the golden opportunity that would come out of that is they say, oh, you're interested? We're actually hiring, in a few weeks. Let me forward me your resume and I'll send it on to whoever. So those opportunities to do informational interview with alumni, preferably alumni of your school, but even if it's somebody that just works at a company you're really interested in, it can't hurt to send a message as long as you're respectful and not asking for too much. And a lot of people will be very willing to help you and to take the time out of their day to spend 15 or 20 minutes talking to you.
As you are now, like you're pretty accomplished and like successful in your company right now. I can see that. Would you say that would you say that you have an overall goal that you set yourself within marketing analytics?
That's a great question about direction and my goal. So right now I'm an associate, and there's just levels to climb constantly. It's kind of a direct trajectory from associate analyst to senior analyst to consultant to senior consultant to director. So at my current company, I kind of have that path to follow. And I would say one of my goals is to manage and mentor people. As I'm taking the time to do this, I love imparting knowledge and I love helping people out. So that's one of my long-term career goals. I love data analytics. Like, it's fun, but I should say I like it. It's fun. But in the long term, do I really want to be behind a computer screen all day? Not that that's what I'm doing right now, but that's kind of not the trajectory that I want to take. I like using analytics, using coding languages to solve business problems and then being able to present them to clients. One of the things that I have as advice for you is to also, for yourself, to take the opportunity to mentor. So I know there's a few seniors in the room. So if you have the opportunity to mentor freshmen or sophomores, or as you get into maybe your grad school program, mentoring undergrads, take that time. It can be a really enriching experience to help somebody. Maybe you edit their resume or look over their resume or practice interviewing with them, and they land a job because something that tangibly that you help them with. It can be a really fulfilling experience for you. And as well, when you get into an interview process, and Dr. T actually asked me this question in an interview, he said, what are you most proud of? And if you say your GPA or your test scores, you will immediately fail that interview. So kind of find something meaningful to answer that question. What are you most proud of? Is it helping people with their resumes? Is it practicing interviewing? Is it connecting people to get a job? Is it helping people with their homework? Maybe that's it. But kind of make that your truth and find something that you can be proud of and something you can come up in interviews. Okay, I have one last piece of advice, and it'll tie into me sharing, if I can share. Oh God, I need to learn how to screen share. So one last piece of advice, and you guys are gonna laugh, but it's fake it till you make it. So you guys see me, he just said, oh, successful, accomplished, whatever it was. I see other people as that. And I just present myself as such. So really just act like you've been there before in an interview situation. Act like you deserve to be there because you do. And don't ever come off as thinking degrading your self-worth or what you know in any kind of interview or networking situation. Be humble, but be confident.
It was just like a quick question. Would you say that, do you know any coworkers who probably adopt that same principle? They continue to make it?
I do. Like you'll find it a lot in professional settings that fake it till you make it is like more and more. Because when I was your age, I just saw people like me as so disconnected and so far off of where I was. And I didn't realize that I'm 2 years where any of you can be, 2 years away from where any of you can be. It's not, you need to stop looking at people at Google or people at a big company that you want to work for as this immaculate, perfect person. Oftentimes there's somebody who had a little bit of confidence, were pretty bright, and also, had the right connection or took the right risk.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so can you guys see this resume from my sophomore, junior year?
Yes. We can see.
Okay. Great. So some things right off the bat that I noticed. My address is on there. It doesn't need to be on any of your resumes. Nobody cares about where you live anymore. As well, you'll just kind of see I have a really funny section. I have social media, and I put in parentheses Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, advanced. And I wrote for you guys, what does that mean? Because I get resumes like this all the time, and this was my personal resume, and I have no idea what it means. Do you know how to pull the analytics from it, or have you just posted on Twitter before? So it's kind of funny to take a step back and look at it and be like, what exactly does that mean? But yeah, kind of funny. But you can see it's pretty bare bones. So I think this is the beginning of my junior year of college, and I really don't have too much on there. I have a few honors, education, blah, blah, blah. But in 2 to 3 short years, my current resume is a lot more filled out. I've dropped my personal address. I have 2 degrees on there, and then I have 3 areas of work experience, 2 of which are internships. And then I get down to this section where I have my specialized skills. So when I talk, you don't necessarily need to have these specific skills, but for you to get an understanding of why a resume might pop out, listing out specific skills that you have is always a great thing to do. Because like I said, a lot of people list Excel, but do they list intermediate VBA? No, they don't list that. So that's a good thing, as well as Excel functions. So VLOOKUP, pivot tables, conditional formatting, and optimization software. That shows that I've actually worked in Excel and not just opened the program before, if that makes sense.